G'day guys, happy running. 10 minutes is on. I'm in the clinic today and I've got a new microphone set up. I've improved my camera setup at the gym as well, so hopefully it'll be a bit nicer and also a bit better, nicer to listen to and a bit better to watch if you are watching it on either Spotify, YouTube, or on the Facebook group. Because I am trying to make this as useful and as valuable and as enjoyable to listen to as possible, and I know that crappy sounding audio is really quite painful on the ears, so trying to make this as good as possible. So any feedback is very welcome, and the best place to do that would be on the STEPN Injury Prevention Facebook group, or sending me a message on whatever platform you're consuming this, because I do want to make it as worthwhile as possible for you guys. So any episode suggestions or topics that you'd like me to dive deeper into are very much encouraged. And everyone's situation is really different, like coming from different backgrounds, whether that's no exercise before or heaps of exercise, lots of running or lots of strength training. All of these situations have different needs and different specific approaches, because there is so much variability in the human body and not every bit of advice is the same for everyone. So that's why I'm trying to generally talk in big principles that are hopefully applicable. And again, this isn't specific medical advice for you guys, so I'm hopefully just giving you the right sort of frameworks in your mind to then have conversation with health professionals if you do need them. So would love your feedback, would love your specific questions, and the best place to do that is the STEPN Injury Prevention Facebook group. So in exciting STEPN news, I've just got my second pair of sneakers from the earnings that I've got from my level 9 runners, gradually chipping away, and finally got enough to get my second pair. So hopefully I'll be able to mint my my third pair soon. So to help me along the way, if you guys wouldn't mind sending me some love in the form of GST or GMT or Solana, that would be really appreciated. I've had over 600 listens to the podcast now, which is really exciting. It's really I'm glad that I seem to be providing something useful for you guys. I've had one person send some GMT through, which was really nice of him. But if everyone sent one piece, then I could upgrade tomorrow and get that third pair, and that would be really cool. But again, I really enjoy helping people out with this stuff, so no pressure, but it would be very much appreciated if you have got value out of this. So today I'm going to be talking about a topic that gets a lot of attention in the sort of health and rehab space. I've talked about how it does seem to be the first go-to for a lot of my patients in terms of what they think is most important for injury prevention and performance increases, which is, you guessed it, stretching. Now, I've briefly touched over it before, but I thought now would be a good time to go into a bit more information about a bit about the background of the science of stretching, when it's useful, when it's not so useful, and what you maybe could be doing instead. So with stretching, I think the first place to start off with is understanding what's actually happening when you're stretching your muscles, because I think there's this sort of simplistic idea that it's kind of like plasticine, and that you're just gradually lengthening the muscle fibers or the tissue and the fascia or the connective tissue as if it was sort of plasticine, and it's lengthening over time, and that's how you get more mobility. But the thing about stretching is what is actually happening is you don't get this what's called sarcomere genesis, which is basically a sarcomere is one of the muscle fibers, and you don't get this increase of muscles in a line when you're stretching. That can happen with very prolonged eccentric training. So I talked about eccentric contractions yesterday, I think it was, with lengthening under tension. So doing like a Romanian deadlift with long eccentric holds for your hamstrings might do that. Not saying you should be doing that, but basically, it's not that when you're stretching you're getting stimulus for muscles to grow more fibers in a long direction. And it's not stretching those fibers, because imagine if it was stretching those fibers, that would make the muscle actually really quite dysfunctional, because we need those fibers to be overlapping to be able to produce force. So what's happening is you actually have your neural system that controls, so that's your brain and your nerves, that basically controls what your body can do. And so I've talked about this a bit before with muscle spasm, the idea that basically if you overload your muscles and you do more than their capacity can handle, then often your muscles will spasm up, go into spasm, lock down movement, and try and control the body that way. So with stretching, what we're actually trying to do is almost convince your body that it's safe to access these larger ranges of motion. That's why it takes lots of time, lots of repetition, and also stretching. Like a lot of people then think that they should like stretch really, really, really hard to get this new range of motion, whereas often that ends up leaving people pretty sore. It is a really significant load on your body, and as I've talked about with load on the body, we need to manage that, and stretch load, if you do it that way, can be really quite stressful. There has been some research to suggest that even static stretching before before a workout or before trying to contract with those muscles will decrease your maximum voluntary contraction strength, so you become less able to produce adequate force through there. So static stretching, especially before exercise, is really a bit of a no-no these days. So what, I guess, for a really specific running actionable thing, if you think about the movements involved in running, especially for something like what most of us are doing, which is running at a pretty manageable pace. Even if you're a runner, in runners, you're still like mostly going to be running about that 5 minute kilometer pace. You're not going to be looking like Usain Bolt with these steps that are going 9 meters per step or whatever insane it is. I know it's not 9 meters, so something like 3 meters or whatever insane length he steps per step of his 100-meter race. So the range of motion needed for really good running technique is actually quite a low range of motion for your ankles, knees, hips, etc. Sorry about the yelling in the background. I work inside a gym, so there is going to be a bit of that. So the idea that you need all this range of motion, all this stretching to facilitate your running is not correct, basically. And I know, so I guess people usually probably come at stretching thinking that they're going to help muscle tightness. But again, as I said, the thing that helps muscle tightness is building up capacity within those muscles to do work. So you can tick stretching off there. You don't need, that's not going to be the main thing that helps. And again, running, range of motion is not usually the limiting factor for people. It's actually performance enhancing generally to have stiffer muscles, stiffer tendons, because when you don't have to have as much active control of your range of motion, that's going to be much more efficient. If you imagine, I've done this a few times, but imagine the extreme example of the other end. So if you were the stretchiest yogi in the world who could bend their ankles in half, and what can happen. Yeah, so basically, if you really have huge range of motion, that every step your ankle went through this full range, you'd have to put so much muscular effort into stopping that full range of motion to maintain that sort of efficient running posture that it would really lead to heaps more work. So running is all about efficiency. We want to get the most distance, the most speed with the least amount of energy cost. So yeah, if you try, if you force yourself and achieve this huge range of motion through your ankles, through your hips, through your knees, then you've actually then end up just running into this issue where you really need to be strong through that range. Otherwise you'll just be so inefficient, you kind of won't get anywhere, and inefficiency means putting more load in the body, and therefore more likely to overdose and injure yourself. So stiffness can actually be quite a helpful property, where you get that stretch shortening cycle that I've talked about before, which is basically a way of using the elastic properties of your muscles and tendons to create movement efficiently. So with stretching, where it can be useful, and we're running to the end of time here, is there's some sort of sense that dynamic stretching, so basically things where you're not holding an end range for a long period of time, but rather kind of moving through range, might be like a swinging hamstring stretch where you're swinging your leg back and forth, or going up and down off the edge of a step with your ankles, basically taking your muscles through range at a similar speed or like working up to a similar speed as you would be running. That's a nice way of just preparing your body for movement, which, as I've talked about warm-ups before, is a good way of just like you're basically just trying to gradually increase your movement until you're at the level where you want to be performing. So that can be useful, but by no means we'll finish. That's the timer. I'll just quickly wrap this up. So not to say that everyone has to be doing dynamic stretching, but it's like if you are going to stretch, that is, especially before a running effort, that's the way to do it. And when it comes to whether you should static stretch at the end, it's not going to help your DOMS, that delayed onset muscle soreness. Again, we talked about what causes DOMS with the eccentric contractions, and basically the way to think about it is like once you've caused that load, that stimulus, that damage on the muscle, you can't unscramble that egg. No amount of stretching is going to make those muscle fibers suddenly able to like back together. And again, it's that stimulus that does cause growth and adaptation. So you wouldn't want to unscramble that egg anyway. And in fact, by doing lots of static stretching, you're even causing more of that micro tearing, so it can almost probably be counterproductive. So the reason why you would want to stretch afterwards is if you like it. If you really just find it a relaxing, nice, pleasurable experience, then definitely do it. If you have other sports where range of motion is really important, like dancing or some martial arts, then certainly do that. But I want you guys to be doing it for the right reasons, not because you feel like you have to. Another reason why it could be good immediately after you finish exercise is something that I'm going to go into with the recovery side of things, which I talked about the pillars of recovery earlier, and I've done a few episodes on the first two, which is sleep and nutrition, but stress management is one. And by clamping your stress hormones, so basically like going from a heightened state down to a relaxed state quite quickly, is a nice way of managing your stress hormones in your body, which can then lead to better recovery, as suggested in the Human Lab podcast. So that could be a way, a reason why static stretching could be useful, because you're just chilling out, having a moment before getting back into your busy lives. If you're just taking 10 minutes of slow breathing and stretching, not staring at your phone. So that could be a good reason to do it. But again, don't fall into this like trap of being really guilty that you don't spend enough time stretching, because it's just not that important for running. So hopefully that was helpful. If that's all shocking and sounds wrong, I'd love to hear your feedback. If you haven't listened to the stuff about strengthening that episodes I've done already, make sure you do, and this will give it more context. Hopefully you got something out of today. If you did, let me know. If you want anything, if you want any topics covered or specific questions answered, head to the STEPN Injury Prevention Facebook group. And if you could send me a GST, I might just be able to mint my third sneaker, which would be really exciting. Then I could finally run 20 minutes instead of 10 minutes a day. Would love that. Anyway, guys, have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.